This is a Willets Point Shea Stadium bound 7 express train. The next and last stop is Willets Point, Shea Stadium.
Oh, yes, it is the Subway to Shea podcast. Anthony Rivera here with you, talking about all the news and happenings surrounding that team from Queens, the New York Mets. Episode 205 from the Subway to Shea studios in my office. Make sure you're following Subway to Shea on X, Instagram, and TikTok at Subway to Shea. You can subscribe on YouTube. We are only 8 subscribers away from the magical number of 1,000. So please make sure you're subscribing and getting all the great content from my channel. You can also listen to Subway to Shea on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. And you can follow me personally at Ant Rivera 86. And now, more supporting. Subway to Shea has super chats, super stickers, super thanks, all available on YouTube. So if you definitely want to get your comments out there, I know that the super chats definitely guarantee to put those chats out there. Make sure you're doing that and helping out the channel as well. Well, as last night was taking place, there was a whole different vibe to what this show was possibly going to be if this losing streak continued. But thankfully, we are on more of a positive note, even if just for a day or two. But the Mets snapped their 7-game losing streak, tied for first now in the NL East again. And that is good to be back on the winning end of things. And today, to join me on the Subway to Shea podcast is Tom Rayfield, contributor for Mets in the UK. You can follow him on X, Tom NYMUK, and at Mets in the UK on X. Tom, how you doing, my friend? It's great to be speaking to you again.
Yeah, good to see you again, Ant. Thanks for having me back on. Doing well. How about yourself?
I'm doing very well. Now, the first time I had you on was last year during the London series, and the Mets were playing the Philadelphia Phillies. So I said, you know what, let's bring it back on here and get this show rolling. That was really the turning point. You know, you could talk about Grimace and all of the outside things, but that series in London was the real turning point of the 2024 New York Mets into what we're getting to see this year, of them being in first place, or at least tied for first place in the National League East right now. It kind of really brought this team together.
Yeah, absolutely. Both on and off the field, it was great. All the things that happened that weekend at the London series. Great to see the Mets doing their thing. Obviously, we saw that amazing play from Luis Torrens, the double play to end the second game. Great baseball over 2 days, and yeah, it was really the catalyst, I think, for the season, especially off the back of poor May form and the team meeting with Lindor. I think it just came along at the right time for the Mets, and yeah, we all know about the rest of 2024. What a year it was for the Mets, and yeah, great time to be a Mets fan for sure.
Absolutely. And now into this 2025 season, the Mets got up to a pretty hot start in April, in May. Kind of, had this little bit of a June swoon with this 7-game losing streak, but they snapped it on Saturday against the Philadelphia Phillies. Shout out to everyone in the room right now. We got 31 people to start off this show. Duran Rivera, Jeff Cohen, Green Machine in here as well. We got Armand, Nelson Cruz. Great to have you here. Tom G817, appreciate you. D, everyone in the chat. It's always fun to have you guys here. Any comments, any questions, make sure you throw it out there. We'll make sure to get to those as we go along with the show. But let's start off with the Mets snapping their 7-game losing streak against the Philadelphia Phillies. The Bats came out to play. They hit 7 home runs in the game, and they seem to really love to hit the home runs in Philadelphia. It's a bandbox over there in Philadelphia. And the Mets have a good time. Francisco Lindor, 2 for 5, had a home run, his 15th of the season, 3 RBIs and a run. On top of that, now the Mets have a 28-game winning streak anytime Francisco Lindor hits a home run. So if he could hit a home run every game for the rest of the season, that would be just grand. Brandon Nimmo, who's hit it up lately, 2 for 4, 2 homers, 2 RBIs, 2 runs, and a walk. He has 15 home runs on the season. Juan Soto, 4 for 5, hit 2 home runs, 4 RBIs, 2 runs, was the Subway to Shea player of the game yesterday. now has 16 home runs. He's second in home runs to Pete Alonso, who's got 18. Who would have thought, right? Because he's been struggling to start the season. Now he's second on the team in home runs. Jared Young also hit his 4th home run of the season. And Francisco Alvarez, whose power has been pretty much non-existent this season, hits his 3rd home run of the season, although he did have a passed ball, wild pitch that cost the team a run. We'll get into that a little bit later. A caveat to all this, all these home runs were solo shots, so they're still struggling with runners in scoring position. 2 for 7, 7 left on base. Griffin Canning pitched 5 innings, gave up 6 hits, 4 runs, 3 of them were earned. 2 walks, 4 strikeouts. He's 7-3 on the season, got the win, 3.91 ERA. A little bit better than his last couple of starts, but want to see what he did in April a little bit more now. And bounce back outings for Huascar Brazaban and Ryan Stanek coming out of the bullpen. You're going to need those 2 guys down the stretch here. Tom, what are your takeaways from this very important win that got the Mets off the snide here?
Yeah, I think it's been great to see the hitting back. There was a good stat from Opta. It's the first time in MLB history that there's been 7 or more home runs in a game, and all of them have been solo. So it's a nice, unique twist from yesterday's game. Great to see Soto, going yard a couple of times. He was phenomenal yesterday. I think the Jared Young home run is quite important for him, given that we saw Jankowski get a grand slam in AAA. He knows that he's got competition, and if he doesn't start hitting, he's potentially got his position on the roster under threat. Alvarez, it's great to see him go deep as well. I thought Young's comments after the game about going back to basics, I think that kind of shows whether the losing streak has kind of meant they've been pressing a little bit more at the plate. I don't know. But they seem to just hit it right last night. And it's good that was back. Good that, Brazaban had a great inning as well. Pitching seems to, on the whole, be coming back a little bit. There's a lot of positive takeaways. Obviously, it's one game. I'm not going to get ahead of myself just yet. It would be great if they can carry that on and take the series tonight. But most importantly, they've stopped the losing streak, back to the wins. And long may it continue as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, that's the most important thing, is to stop the losing streak, stop the bleeding, and they did just that. There's been seasons, successful seasons that the Mets have went through. I could think of 1999, where they went through a rough patch, lost 7-8 in a row, able to turn it around, get themselves in the playoffs. So this happens. It happened to the Phillies a week or 2 ago, where they lost 8 out of 9, and now they're back in the hunt. They're back in the race because of the Mets falling apart there. So, this is a part of the season-long grind of 162. We always, as Met fans, tend to get a little bit more harsh on the team because we know that the talent is there, especially on offense. The pitching came out of nowhere this season doing what they did, but the offense is what has struggled the most for this team. And to not have them hit with runners in scoring position with the top 5 batters that you have there. Obviously, we know 6 through 9 is a little tougher. You mentioned Jared Young hitting the home run being huge for him. He struggled in the DH spot, which we're going to talk a lot more about during the rest of this show. How important was it for the top 3 in the lineup, Francisco Lindor, Brandon Nimmo, Juan Soto? We mentioned the stats from that game, to set the tone of the game with the struggles that they've all gone through.
Yeah, it's massive. I mean, we all know from the stories we've heard, the characteristics that Lindor and Nimmo bring to the team on and off the field. So I think them leading by example definitely sets the tone for the rest of the batting order. Obviously, Soto has that pressure. He needs to live up to his price tag, and he's obviously feeling that pressure as well. So it will have been great for him to have a couple of great hits and, drive in a few more runs as well. But you're right, it's a team effort. And I don't think the struggles we've seen over the last few games, I don't think you can pin that on any one player. As a collective effort, it's been poor from all of them. I think they will admit that. They're not deliberately going out there trying to lose games. They're trying their best. But like I said before, I think they've been chasing a little bit at the bat. And it's just not been going their way. And like you said, that happens. 2015 as well, if I remember correctly. They lost 7 games that year in June, like back to back. It happens. It's part of the up and down of baseball. And like you said, there's still a long way to go. I don't think it's anything to be concerned about. But yeah, it's a step in the right direction. The top of the order is hitting, which is great. If we can see that again tonight, then I'll start to get a bit more excited about things. But it is just one game at the moment, so I'm not going to get too ahead of myself. But yeah, it's always great to see those guys hitting and driving in runs for the Mets. Runners in scoring position has always been an issue for the Mets as long as I can remember. It's not like a this year thing or a last year thing. It's gone on for multiple years now. I don't think, again, there's any one person you can blame for that. It never seems to go our way. And who knows when that's going to turn around. But yeah, as long as the boys can keep hitting, I'm good as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, and if the pitching, especially the starting pitching, David Peterson has been electric for mostly the entire season, going all the way back into him coming back from his hip surgery. He's pretty much leading the rotation with Kodai Senga out, with Sean Manaea on the mend, Frankie Montas getting ready to come back. A little bit of the reserves ready to, the reinforcements are about to come back soon. So maybe the Mets can hold on just for a couple more days, a couple more weeks, and get to, I don't want to say full strength, because I don't know how long Kodai Senga is going to be out. But once Kodai Senga does come back, it's kind of going to feel like the team's in full strength, that they can say healthy. Going into the chat here, G Money Stacks saying, I saw your recent interview with Dexter Henry straight out of Flushing Mets podcast. Pretty awesome. You can check that out on the New York Post YouTube page. That was a lot of fun to do. He has a new one coming out every Sunday, so make sure you check that out. Jared Young saying, for actually D saying for Jared Young, he'll be gone next week when Vientos returns. Most likely when Mark Vientos comes back, we will probably see the last of Jared Young, and probably Mark Vientos will end up being the DH, I would assume, not playing as much third base, with Mauricio as well as Brett Beatty probably getting the bulk of the time there. Shout out to Patty, who's in the chat. Shout out to Hector Blunt Thought Sports. Make sure you follow his YouTube page as well. He's in the chat. Amon saying, per Opta Stats, it's the first time in MLB history 2 different games had 7 or more solo homers on the same day, in the Mets versus Phillies game and the Nationals versus the Dodgers as well. I want to get into game 1, because the Mets lost 10-2. That made this a 7-game losing streak. Bright spots, really. I got to say, Blade Tidwell, although he pitched only 3 2/3 innings pitched, same as his game in St. Louis when he did a spot start, but a whole lot better this time around, limiting the damage. 4 hits, 2 of them were earned runs, 3 walks, 4 strikeouts. What did you think of his second career start in the major leagues? I was a little bit impressed. You look for the bright spots in these big losses, and, I could not put any type of blame in this loss on Blade Tidwell getting his second start in the major leagues.
No, for sure. I agree. I think the first outing, we saw a lot of control issues. He had a pretty, if I remember correctly, he had a pretty decent first inning, and then it kind of fell apart with his control quite quickly, and he got gassed quite quickly in that game. I think this one, you're right. He's clearly been working on some things. Clearly, the pitching lab has had some sort of impact on things for him. He's not there yet, obviously, but then he's still young. We're not expecting him to come in and pitch a complete game or 7 innings just yet. He's not there. It's going to take time for that to happen. I think, like you say, there's bright spots. There's things you can pick out of that, and you can say, okay, he's improving. He's going in the right direction. It's not a worry. It's not like he's regressed from that first outing. I think he'll get there. It's about tempering those expectations. Like when we saw the likes of Christian Scott come up and Sproat, it's about remembering that these are young guys. They're not there yet. We're not expecting them to be, fully fledged starting pitchers just yet. So yeah, I'm happy with what I saw from him. It's still early days, but yeah, I think he could have got that final out. I think if they'd have let him go that far. I can also see at the same time why they pulled him when they did, just in case with the game where it was.
Yeah, either way it goes is they keep him in too long. Why did you keep him in too long? They take him out. Why did you take him out? When the team is on the losing streak that they were on, kind of a little bit desperate times almost happen, whether it was that, whether it was he was on a pitch count. I think he was at 79 pitches. I don't know. I don't keep up with, how he was doing in AAA and how many pitches he was throwing. Maybe that's involved in the decision making. But the fact that he was able, to give us, what he could during that game, I thought was commendable. The other shout out I want to give to, and I know it will sound like a homer, but, Jose Butto. I mean, Jose Butto has always been one of my guys. So, it hurts me to see him struggle the way that he did in the postseason and a lot of this season. But he pitched 2 scoreless innings, striking out 3. His last 7 appearances, Tom, 9 1/3 innings pitched, only 4 hits, 3 walks, 9 strikeouts. Hasn't given up the run, so he's ERA at 0 there. With the way the bullpen has been struggling, overworked, especially Reed Garrett, Huascar Brazaban, who had a bounce back in the Mets win the other night. How important is a return to form for Jose Butto?
Yeah, I actually agree with what you said. I quite like Butto. I think he's got good stuff, especially when he's on it. He's really good. But like you just said, I think a lot of the bullpen is calling out for the All-Star game. They're wanting that week off. That they're in desperate need of rest.
Mm-hmm.
And I think, yeah, it's a shame that it happens, but we're kind of burning through the bullpen quite quickly. It's good to see him come back and pitch solid in the same way that we saw Brazaban last night. He came back and pitched a solid outing after a couple of rough ones. So it's nice to know they're not completely burnt out at this point. We can still rely on these guys. I think it's definitely important we start managing how far the starters go into a game to make sure that we can just look after them and keep them going until that All-Star break so they can have that week off, rest and recuperate and come back stronger for the second half of the season. I think that's going to be key. Obviously, we've had quite a few injuries on the pitching side of things. So it'd be good if we can keep injury-free in the bullpen. I know we've not got too many options left that we can sort of call up. I know there's been 1 or 2 that have sort of been coming up and down, coming to and from AAA. I know Brooks Raley is due to start his rehab. So we've got things in the pipeline, but it's not quite there enough for my liking. So yeah, I think we just need to make sure we're managing it. And I think going back to what you were saying before about Tidwell, I almost wonder whether the pitch count is there because they don't want to cause an injury, much like we saw with Christian Scott, having to now go through Tommy John. I'm wondering if that's playing on them a little bit with, Senga being out, McGill's out, just managing these pitchers that a little bit better to make sure we don't have any silly sort of like niggling injuries that are going to cost us on the back end of the season.
And I think that's why what David Stearns brings to this organization is so important. He's able to interchange bodies, even if it's just for a couple of games. He has to manage players with injuries. He's got to manage players with options that can't be sent down to the minors. So he brings in guys like Justin Garza, and he brings in Hageman, all these players that interchange and intertwine. Just maybe it's for a day, maybe with Max Kranick, who's now going to be on the injured list. He's got the bodies to do this. Jose Castillo, who's fit in pretty nicely with this team. There's so many components to the bullpen and how they get to be managed, especially with a rotation that doesn't always give you 5 to 6 innings every night, right? I mean, the best 2 outings from the Mets has been David Peterson, a complete game shutout, and then he pitched 8 1/3, or he pitched 7 1/3 against the Atlanta Braves last week. That's been the best 2 outings that we've gotten from the starting pitching. So it really does help if Jose Butto can give them innings. I know that Daniel Nunez is back up. He's going to possibly give them some innings with Max Kranick out. So the Mets have some options here. And if they could get Reed Garrett a little bit more rest, if they could get Huascar Brazaban a little bit more rest, both of them kind of lead the team in innings pitched. I think Brazaban's number 1. Reed Garrett's probably around tied for 3-ish, I think, once you check out the stats. And it's important to get these guys rest. We saw what happened to Reed Garrett last season, right? They overused him. He was the most important part of April and May. And then when we got to June, we're seeing what we're seeing right now from him, struggling to get his pitches over, struggling to get that strikeout pitch to end the innings. So, he needs his rest as well before he is, overworked. I have Carlos Ramos in the chat saying, seems very selective when Butto is getting strikeouts for just being competent, but Brazaban is not getting a shout out for being dominant. Oh, shout out. Gotcha. Thanks for taking it. We just mentioned Brazaban. Maybe you missed that, Carlos, but we did mention Brazaban and the way he's been pitching. I said yesterday he had a bounce back outing. Pretty much 2 innings he pitched. Nice bounce back for him in the Mets victory there. But he has struggled. I mean, he has struggled over his last 7 games. It hasn't been all sunshine and rainbows. But Jose Butto has not given up an earned run in over 9 1/3 innings. So you got to make sure you talk about that as well, especially with the ones that are struggling in this bullpen. I want to get to the next point here, and we're going to go back. We have to backtrack. If you're going to talk about this losing streak, the Mets got swept at home against the Tampa Rays. They had an opportunity to turn that around and really kind of bury the Atlanta Braves. And obviously that didn't happen because Atlanta is still the house of horrors for the Mets. And, I say this because did the Braves really win this series kind of on their own merit here? It didn't feel like that. It did feel like, and I'm not going to take anything away from the Atlanta Braves, but this series in particular did feel like the Mets beat themselves instead of the Braves doing most of the work. The Chris Sale game, that was all Chris Sale. I mean, he pretty much dominated, and now all of a sudden he's on the injured list, and I assume it's after diving for that play in the 9th inning to get that out. But the Mets, whether it was poor managing of the pitching staff and the bullpen, the team not feeling really focused or aware, whether it was on the base pass, poor defense, especially at catcher with Francisco Alvarez. So, I think that the Mets really beat themselves in this series. What about you, Tom?
Absolutely, yeah. Added to the fact that every time we seem to play the Braves, they seem to do a rain dance before our games, and they always seem to get delayed whenever we play them at Braves. But yeah, like I think you're right. I think in the same way, there's the mental aspect of the game, isn't there, where winning breeds winning because you're in that confident mood, hits go your way a little bit more, you get strikeouts a little bit more. And I feel the reverse of that happens. And when you lose, it keeps like that momentum keeps building. And I feel like you're right that the Mets kind of undid that for themselves. They almost got in their heads a little bit too much when things were going the Braves' way in that series. And I think, other than, like you said, Sale was different. That's a different thing altogether. But I think there's a lot of things that happened in that series that you just look at and think, had they have not been on the back of that losing series against the Rays, I think it would have gone slightly differently if they'd have been in a more positive mindset. And whether that's something the Mets need to work on, I don't know, because obviously I don't know what goes on behind the scenes. But there does seem to be this mental issue, and it seemed to be more of a team mental issue than individual ones. Like we've seen Alvarez has struggled. That could be a mental issue. McGill has struggled. That could be a mental issue. But the Braves series, just the whole team just seemed to have a complete blank, and they just did not seem to have anything to answer for. And like you say, I don't think for 1 minute Atlanta were that great. We just managed to lose because we were the worst team in that series, which is frustrating, especially against a divisional rival. I don't get too hung up on the standings, the NL East at the moment. I only tend to start looking at that once the All-Star game is done. There's still so much more baseball to play.
Yeah.
I don't think it's the end of the world that we've lost that series to the Braves come September. But yeah, they just didn't have an answer, and I think that was their own doing rather than the Braves themselves.
No, absolutely. I think it was Green Machine who mentioned not having Garrett ready to start the 8th in game 1 cost us that win as soon as Peterson put a few on base. Look, I would have thrown out Peterson. I thought it was the right move to get him into the 8th inning and see if he can continue. They were up by 3 runs already. I thought it was fine to have him come out. But you have to, and once you start getting to the 8th and 9th inning, I think you have to start getting someone warmed up, because once he gave up whatever the first walk of that inning, it's time to then go to the bullpen. And I think he was getting up there in pitches. I thought it was time to take him out, but Reed Garrett was just not ready. And I think that's a problem when it comes to, Mendy not getting him up, Jeremy Hefner not getting these pitchers ready and up in time to take over there. Another comment from Duran Rivera. Do you think that Garrett should call his own pitches? He shook off, you put Torrens here, but it was Francisco Alvarez that he was trying to shake off here, where they called for a splitter instead of letting Garrett throw his fastball, led to the Ozuna bases clearing double. That was another thing. And we're going to talk about, I'm glad you mentioned that, because we're going to talk about Francisco Alvarez here. What do you think, Tom, the Mets should do with Francisco Alvarez? Should he be able to work out his issues on the main roster or maybe get a reset in AAA? I'm under the impression that he might need a reset in AAA. I know he's only 23 years old, but he's been struggling at the plate. Even with the homer on Saturday, he's struggling at the plate. And on top of that, he's starting to bring that behind the plate with him with the pass balls and defense. And it's been costly. It's cost them already a couple runs this week. I read an article by John Harper of SNY who spoke to a major league scout and said it felt like a low point for Alvarez. He's not squaring up on pitches. He should be hammering. He's chasing pitches he should take. He looks completely lost. Also went on to say, I think he's in his own head so much that the Mets need to try something drastic and send him down, give him a chance to figure things out away from the spotlight. Also mentions if his problems are mental or mechanical, which I think both, honestly. I think it's something mental. I think it's something mechanical as well. But like I said, he's only 23 years old. I'm not giving up on him right now. I just think that this team right now and where they're at and where his mind is right now, that he needs a reset in AAA. What do you think?
Yeah, I think you're right. I think he needs some time in AAA. I think he needs to get his swagger back. And that seems to be affecting his confidence, both at the plate and behind the plate. You're right. Some of the plays he's made defensively haven't been like him at all. Even when it's not been going right for him at the plate, we've always been able to rely on his ability to call pitches and to have solid defense. And it's just not there. And we saw that in yesterday's game as well. We know that obviously Senga's not like a perfect catcher by any means, but he can do a serviceable job in the meantime whilst Alvy's down. Torrens, although he's had a couple of shaky appearances, we all know he's solid as well. So I don't feel like the Mets are going to really struggle at the catcher position without him being there. There's nothing that Torrens and Senga can't offer that Alvarez is offering at the moment. So it's not like we're gonna take a step back if we send him down. But I think, he just needs to go back and get his confidence back, especially behind the plate, start hitting lots of home runs in AAA, and just really work on that confidence side of things. I feel like the defensive pitch calling side of things will come back once he's feeling more confident at the plate. I certainly don't want to make excuses for the guy, but obviously having just had his first kid, that's obviously having an impact on him. Off the field, he's going through all of those changes as well. And like you say, he's 23. That's a lot to go through as a young man. And I think professionally and personally, that's probably having an impact on Alvarez. So I think, it makes sense to send him down. Like you, I'm not going to give up on him. I think he's still a fantastic talent. And I know he can work on this and he can get it fixed because we've seen that from him before. And I think you're right with the mechanics as well. I think he's tried listening to too many different people with too many different strategies and approaches. And he's almost got to figure out what's best for him rather than listening to too many people. And it's almost like he's getting too much input and he needs to just reset and go back to basics. And hey, if you've got to do that in AAA, why not? Go down, spend a few weeks down there, get it figured out, and let's reevaluate come the end of August and see where he's at then.
Yeah, and I think also, and I'm glad that Will White brought this up, he does think that Alvy needs a reset down in AAA. He feels like they rushed him back from the injury. The team was playing fine and didn't have to rush him back. I agree with this. And this is 2 years in a row now. Alvarez coming off the hand injury. They rushed him back, I think, both times. And they really didn't need to. With Torrens playing the way that he did last year, as well as this year, along with Hayden Sanger, to start the season, they really handled this rotation and this pitching staff. They were blocking balls. They were throwing runners out at second base that were trying to steal. They really did a good job of holding down the team to a point where, like, Francisco Alvarez really didn't need to rush back and get back in the thick of things here, at least go through a little bit of a rehab stint. And they rushed him back, I feel like, especially with the hand that he catches with that had this surgery, also putting an impact on him hitting. So I do agree with Will here that they did rush him back. Green Machine saying the issue is Alvarez doesn't get down like a goalie to block the ball. He catches on one knee. Last night he tried to backhand that pitch from Canning rather than knock it down. Yeah, I think there are little subtle changes if they can get with Francisco Alvarez. One being he sits on his knee the whole time, doesn't allow much of a leeway in getting a ball in time once it's a wild pitch or a pass ball. And he's doing this thing where he backhands some of these pass balls, and it just has been not helping him whatsoever. It's really diminished his defense.
Yeah, definitely. I almost wonder whether the backhanding thing is related to the injury, whether he feels he can't get a proper grip on it, or like it's that mental element again, isn't it? I think that's playing on his defense as well. We seem to have lost the pitch framing as well with him. Like he doesn't. When there was that time about 18 months ago where he was just unreal at like converting balls into strikes, and that seems to have disappeared as well. And I just feel like there's just so much wrong. He definitely needs that reset. And like I've said before, like I think Senga and Terenz is a serviceable option in the meantime. I don't think we'll lose games because of them. Yeah, I think, sorry, Alvy, but the time's right. You need to go down and just get yourself right.
Yeah, Alvy was praised for his offense. What's what made him one of the top prospects and the number one prospect in baseball for a time. And he's not providing that right now. So we were leaning on his defense, which was good when he first came up. You mentioned the pitch framing, which was very good. Has started throwing better runners out at second base. Now all of a sudden, over the last year, he's been getting a lot of pass balls by him. Green Machine mentioned all the issues. We talked about it right now. When you're not providing that elite defense while you're not hitting, it's basically like having a backup catcher starting. So you might as well have Luis Terenz, who provides some pop, who can get some hits in some big spots with runners in scoring position, and have Hayden Sanger, who's that just all-around defensive catcher in and playing as the backup. And we saw how it worked the first month and a half. Like I said, like we've both said here, we want Alvy to succeed, but he definitely does need some type of reset to work out the mental issues that he's going through, as well as the mechanical issues. So hopefully he can get himself fixed here. D saying he disagrees here. He says that you'd rather keep Alvy, let him work on his confidence up here instead of down there. He thinks it'll hurt him if they send him down. I think the thing that will hurt Alvy the most is if they do decide to start Luis Terenz a lot more and then have him just backing up. That helps him not one bit. So hopefully he does figure it out if he does stay up here, or if not, hopefully he gets a little bit of a reset down in AAA. We got 123 people in the room right now with us, chatting, throwing up questions. We appreciate you. We appreciate all of the time as well. As Jeff Cohen says, make sure you like the video. Make sure you subscribe, not only to Subway to Shea, but make sure you're subscribing to Mets in the UK as well. They have their YouTube channel out there. Make sure you check that out. We are only 8 subscribers away here on Subway to Shea to 1,000. Please help us out. Subscribe to the channel and be a part of all of the chats and on all the live streams that we are doing here. Now, I want to get into this. What has been mostly an inept offense, except for Saturday night when they scored 7 runs. And even then, all solo home runs, 2 for 7 with runners in scoring position, left a lot of guys on base there. But the offense has struggled. And you kind of mentioned it, who really is to blame here for this offense, whether it's the players, obviously, number one, right? Because they're the ones that got to do the hitting. You could look at, Carlos Mendoza and how he sets up the lineups with Eric Chavez and Jeremy Barnes. A lot of people are talking about if the Mets should, get rid of Eric Chavez and Jeremy Barnes. They came in before Carlos Mendoza was here. They stuck with them for a while now. And as you mentioned, which was very important, that this is not just this year that the Mets have been struggling with runners in scoring position. This has been something that has happened for years. You could date it all the way back to 2020, 2021. It has been a huge problem. So, Tom, should the Mets fire Eric Chavez and Jeremy Barnes? How much of an impact do you think the hitting coaches have on the offense? Or is this just on the players? And real quick, I just want to, before I let you answer those questions, the Mets offensive rankings as a team, they're 6th in home runs, 11th in RBIs, 12th in runs, 16th in hits. They're 3rd in walks. In average, they're 17th. Their on-base percentage 6th, slugging 5th, OPS 5th. But, I don't know how many people still believe in average. I'm one of those guys. 17th in average. With that offensive group is struggle. So like I asked you before, should the Mets let go of Eric Chavez and Jeremy Barnes? And how much of an impact do you think the hitting coaches have on this offense, or is this just on the players?
I'll start with that last question. I think it's both. It's on the players and the coaching staff. I'm also going to throw in the third element of the data guys. I wonder how much of an impact that's having on the hitting of the team. We know data and analytics is a big part of baseball now. That's never going to go away. It's not going to disappear. I almost wonder, like I was saying before, without it, I wonder if there are too many people in the players' ears, and whether, because we've got two hitting coaches, do they have exactly the same strategy and approach? Like, are they saying the same cohesive message to the players, or are they doing it completely differently? Because that will be messing with them as well. I understand. I can see both sides, but I can see why people are saying, by the hitting coaches, it's a decision that shows they're trying to do something about the hitting, and I can understand why people want that. I'm frustrated watching the Mets hit, just like every other fan. Like you say, runners in scoring position has been an issue for a number of years. You know, it's not a Barnes and Chavez thing. It happened, Chili Davis and all the other hitting coaches we've had before. It's not a new thing by any means. So I don't think that necessarily getting rid of Barnes and Chavez, or any combination of the two, is going to suddenly fix that issue overnight. I'm still thinking it's a mental issue. I think it's a mental thing rather than an ability thing. We know these players can hit, and we've seen that last night. They can hit. I almost wonder whether we need to go back to basics, and rather than trying to tear the face off the ball with every single hit, do we need to just go back to what we saw under Buck Showalter and see a bit more of those small ball, trying to just drive runs in? Like, granted, it's not a highlight reel kind of thing. I get that. It's like the non-sexy way of playing baseball. You're not going to see loads of home runs going over the fence. But in certain close games where you're trying to win, you're trying to beat an opponent like the Braves or like the Phillies, what's wrong with a bit of small ball? Let's try and drive in those runs and win the game that way. Play smarter rather than trying to tear the face off every single ball when you're at the plate. So yeah, I don't really know what the solution is. If I did, I'd be working for the Mets, obviously. But I'd like to see something happen. But I don't think, even if it is a fire Chavez, fire whoever, it's not going to suddenly 180 and it's just going to turn around overnight. Whatever it is, it's going to take time to make these changes. But like I said before, I do have to question what kind of impact data and analytics is having on hitting. What are, like, I've never seen behind the scenes. Like, what are the percentages? How much of it is data? How much of it is Chavez and Barnes giving them input? How much of it is them trusting their own judgment? I don't think we'll ever know, but man, I'm stumped on this one. What about you?
Yeah, it really is at this point, you know, because you have the top 4 or 5 batters who are really hitting for this team. They struggle to hit with runners in scoring position, but you know, you look at the other night when they're, you know, hitting the home runs, all solo shots, still finding a way to win this game, but they're not hitting with runners in scoring position. Thankfully, and our mom put this in the chat, we could stop talking about Juan Soto not being able to hit since May 30th, and this is from Sleeper Mets. 21 games, 24 for 70, 343 batting average, 8 homers, 15 RBIs, 21 walks, and a 1.243 OPS. He's definitely not the problem. Brandon Nimmo's not the problem. He's upped his average around to 250, I think, or maybe a little bit higher than that. He's hitting with power. I feel like Lindor, he'll come out of his slump at some point. We've seen it in the past. I'm not worried about him. Brandon Nimmo batting second. I leave Brandon Nimmo at second. I know the other night that they moved him out of the way. They put Marte in second. Stop doing that. Lindor, Nimmo, Soto, Alonso. Don't mess with the top 4. I mean, some of the most successful Mets lineups did not have interchanging pieces every day moving all over the place. I mean, look at the 2006 team. It was always Reyes, LaDuca, Beltran, Delgado, Wright. They didn't switch them, and that offense did perfectly fine. The problem for the Mets comes in 6 through 9. And with Jared Young as the DH, with the, you know, baby Mets or the kids Mets, whatever you want to call them, not being able to live up to their hype and struggling, that's been the problem. And I read this article from Andy Martino. It was in SNY, kind of a mailbag type article asking, you know, for fans to send in their questions, and one of them was about the baby Mets, and he said, the hype has been the biggest problem for these plays, and I agree. I mentioned Francisco Alvarez being the number one prospect in all of baseball, and that seems to somewhat be infecting him mentally. That's been an issue. And Andy Martino seems to agree that he's just not living up to the potential right now. You have Mark Vientos. He mentioned, he's been a talented hitter, regressed defensively this season. And, there's a thought that maybe he takes over for first base once Pete Alonso's contract is up. Maybe they don't re-sign Pete Alonso and they just go with Mark Vientos at first. Who knows what happens there? Beatty has made tremendous strides defensively, but still struggling as an MLB hitter. And Acuna has been kind of that role player type, getting on base, playing more defense, but has not succeeded at the plate. If one or two of them stick in the major leagues, that would be a success. That's something that Andy Martino, I'm quoting from him and what he said. If one or two of these guys out of the 5 or 6, and you could throw Ronnie Mauricio in there as well, if one of the two of these guys succeed, it'll be success for this team, because prospects are a dime a dozen, right? They're basically a lottery ticket. If you could pick only 2 of these guys, and I'm throwing in Mauricio as well, who would you think or like to see pan out the most for the Mets?
Oh man, it's $1 million question, that one. I would like to see Acuna, because I think we've got a need at second base. I'd like to see that pan out, especially the fact that he can cover for shortstop if anything happens to Francisco. I'm going to say Mauricio purely because I feel that he's more useful as a DH. I'm not sure we've seen the best of Vientos at DH. I'm not really sure we've seen the best of him at third base either. I feel he's a bit confused on where his position is within the team. And as for Beatty, yeah, I almost feel like with all these players, like, don't get me wrong, I'm not wanting any of them to fail. I want them all to succeed. But I feel like with him, perhaps that maybe a New York like big market team is not for him. I almost feel like for him, he's probably better suited in a smaller market team where there's less of that pressure and less of those like spotlights on him. Yeah, I think that's probably the best way I could look at it. As far as the baby Mets go, with what you were saying before about the 6 to 9 hitters being the weak point in the lineup, I almost wonder if maybe the small ball needs to be the tactic for them. Let's get them just putting it into play, getting on base. And if we can load up those bases 6 through 9, when Lindor and Nimmo and Soto come up, we can then drive in more runs and rely on our big hitters to start getting some runs from scoring positions.
Yeah. And to be fair, too, Juan Soto has not been great when it comes to hitting with runners in scoring position. He's had ample opportunities and struggled. Thankfully, Saturday he came through with a big bases loaded double to bring in a couple of runs, but he has struggled here. Carlos Ramos saying if Acuna had been given as much playing time as even Mauricio has been, it would be a different story. And I tend to agree with this, because you look at Acuna in the end of April and May, and he was really starting to hit. He was getting the playing time. He was getting on base. I think right around when Jeff McNeil came back and that time got limited, he started to regress there. So he really needs ample playing time to get going. I don't think they keep all 3 of these guys, but at some point, this team is going to have to commit to either Mauricio, Beatty, Acuna in this infield. I don't know which one it's going to be. Maybe it's 2 of them, but one of them at least is going to get the commitment from this organization. And for me, with Mark Vientos, ever since last year, the adjustments that he made at the plate, how important he was to the postseason and the Mets run there, I am not giving up on Mark Vientos at all. I think that he's an important part of this team. And if he can get his bat going, I think that's very, very, very important. He really is going to have he's going to need to have a strong second half for the Mets to even consider him taking over for Pete Alonso, which I think at this point, Pete, to me, has earned a new contract here. How much more does he have to prove that, and this is most important for me, that he can play in New York. How important is it to be able to play and have the production that he has had in New York? I would keep Pete Alonso personally, and make Mark Vientos the DH.
Yeah, I think in the short term, that's definitely an option. The DH does seem to be a bit of a cursed position for the Mets. Like, they've never really managed to find. I mean, even with like JD Martinez last year, like, he never really got things going. He was okay, but like, he wasn't setting the world alight in that position by any means. I almost wonder whether with the DH thing, sort of having this platoon DH that they seem to keep doing, it stops guys from getting the momentum. Like Carlos was saying with Acuna, like not playing regularly. I almost feel like that's not helping the DH role. We're seeing these players where they'll play a game, they'll do okay, and then the next one they're pulled because, oh, now it's Starling Marte's turn to DH, or whoever it might be that it's their turn. And I get it. You've got a roster stacked full of talented players. They've all got to play to keep them happy, keep them fresh. I understand that, but changing the DH every game or every 2 games is not going to get the DH going. And you're right. I think Vientos is probably the better option of the baby Mets to take that position. I don't want to see Pete moving to a DH role. I'm tired of seeing Marte in the DH role. I don't feel like he's got much left to offer. And Winker's out until end of August, maybe beyond that. We've still not really heard anything concrete about him. So I don't really know what else we've got left. I know Jared Young's likely to go once Vientos is healthy again, but we're kind of out of options at this point unless you go and trade for a DH. And what you're going to have to give up to get someone decent in. See, question here: would you want to see them go for Schwarber, who's a free agent at the end of the year?
I mean, I would never say no to that. Schwarber has been a great offensive power. If you have him and Vientos in that DH position, obviously Schwarber would get more of the playing time. And then you could spell, obviously, Pete Alonso. They're going to have to start having to manage some of these guys and start giving them some days off so that they're fresh. I mean, Pete Alonso basically plays every single game. You know, that works when you're so young, and now he's getting into his 30s. If he gets a contract with the Mets, you assume that it's probably a 4 or 5 year deal, taking him into 35, 36, starting to get up there in age. You're going to need this guy to get some time and to, have some rest so that these players are not injured. You know, there's a lot of toll that takes on this body there. So to have the options when it comes to Vientos, Schwarber, Alonso, I think is great. That would probably be one of my top hitting free agents that I would go after here. If you let, Winker go, if you let Starling Marte, who is obviously not going to return after this year, but Winker basically is just a DH. He plays every so often in the field, but you got a lot of young guys you could throw out there. You can even throw McNeil out there. I don't know how much more he has on his contract, but he plays the outfield as well. So you got him and Tyrone Taylor, Nimmo, Soto. Obviously, he's not going anywhere. So Schwarber would probably be the best option for this team to go after. And what a steal that would be from the Philadelphia Phillies. Rob him right from the National League East division rivals and bring him to Queens, just like the Mets did to Soto when it comes to, I guess more of the mental warfare between the Mets and the Yankees. And look at how that is affecting the Yankees, not only their fans, but the lineup not having Soto part of it. I would go after Schwarber in the offseason, no matter, who is on this team. I think that's a great idea. I think of a guy like Luis Angel Acuna and what he brings to this team, not only defensively, but the speed on the base pass, especially when this team struggles with runners in scoring position. You need someone fast in there. So I don't see him getting sent down. He's going to have to work out his kinks, but probably the really only way to get him more playing time would probably be, and I know people are going to hate this, if you want Acuna to get more playing time, you probably want to keep Jared Young on the team because he really doesn't play any defensive position. He's mostly in there to DH, and you send either Mauricio or Beatty down. That's the only way he's going to get more play, whether it's at third, whether it's at second base, because now you're giving most of your time to Beatty, Mauricio when it comes to second and third, and Acuna kind of gets lost in the mix there. So if you send down one of those guys, we know Jared Young has pop. Now, I'm not saying I want to keep Jared Young. I'm saying if you want to get Acuna more playing time, that's probably the route that it's going to be. Because if Acuna is playing and Mauricio's not playing, it's why is Mauricio not playing, or why isn't Beatty playing? That's probably going to be the way that they go if that's going to be the way to get Acuna more playing time.
Yeah, you're right. And I think whatever the decision's going to be, it's going to be an unpopular one because you're sending down one of the baby Mets and you're effectively keeping Jared Young in their place. But you're right, especially if you're talking about trade value as well. If the long term is to trade one of these players, maybe they are better suited in AAA where they're going to have better numbers. They're going to be playing more confidently, and you can build a bit more of a package with that. I wouldn't like to call on which one. Could you play Acuna in center field? I know he's had a few reps there, but
they don't seem to want to put him at center field for some reason. Like, yeah, there's been times that they could have utilized him and needed some help, give Tyrone Taylor a day off here, and they've went with McNeil. They've stuck with McNeil to play center field. So I don't know if we ever see Acuna in the outfield.
Yeah, it's almost like they value him far more as an infielder than a spot outfielder. But yeah, I think they're going to have to make a decision soon. I think they're going to have to accept that maybe it might not be the right decision, like we've seen with, it's going to blow up in the chat, I can see, but Pete Crow Armstrong, like we got rid of him for the Baez trade and he's gone on and become something. But we have to remember as well, there's no guarantee that any of these prospects are going to make it into something. That's the whole lottery and fun of seeing these prospects come up and play. It's that what if they turn into the next big something? And I think far beyond me and you to make that call, someone at the Mets is going to have to make that call as to which one they're going to get rid of, because there's only so many spots available. And you're right, having these players sitting on the bench doing spot starts here and there, or like changing their position every other game, it's not helping their development. And, if that's going to help us get in a starting pitcher or another relief arm, like maybe we need to make that call before the trade deadline, especially if we've got aspirations of a World Series. Maybe we do need to get rid of Beatty. Maybe we do need to get rid of Acuna or Mauricio or Vientos and see what we can get back. And I'm not saying for one second, like, let's get rid of them for the sake of getting rid of them. But if we can get something great in return, why not? Because it doesn't seem to be working in this platoon hybrid that we've got going on at the moment.
Yeah, and even Duran Rivera brings it up in the chat. Acuna needs to develop plate discipline. If he could get on base like Jet Williams, he could utilize his speed more. That's another player. That's another player in the infield that we're talking about. So Jet Williams, when he's ready to come up, Acuna, Mauricio, Beatty. If you want to throw Vientos in there, fine as well. That's 5 players. They're not all going to be on this team. They're not all going to succeed. I'm giving Vientos the benefit of the doubt because we've seen him succeed here. Acuna with his base running as well as his defense. And I think it was Carlos who said that out of the entire Mets system, he thinks he's the best second baseman. And he's probably right. He has great defensive skills there, and he's saved the Mets a lot of runs. So might as well keep him. He could be that utility type player. Maybe he becomes what Jeff McNeil is once Jeff McNeil is gone. Maybe he becomes that utility player that maybe you do have an option to throw him in the outfield at some point if you really feel like it. He could play third, he could play second. Most importantly, he could play shortstop. I think that's a big thing for him. Mm-hmm. I think really at the end of the day, maybe it is Brett Beatty that's the one that's the most expendable because he's learning second base, he's learning third, but he can't play shortstop. I mean, they're trying him out there. Mauricio can play shortstop. We've seen that already. You want someone to back up Lindor who, takes some nicks and bangs here. Obviously, last season with the back, this season with the foot. You're going to want to get these guys days off. Those are the perfect players in Mauricio and Acuna that can spell Lindor every so often. So I think it's going to probably be Beatty is the one that may be the one on the odd man out. You never know with a guy like Vientos because he can provide power, because he could DH. Teams are always looking for that at the trade deadline, so that's a possibility as well. I just would hold on to them because we know that he can hit here. We've seen it, and he can hit in big spots. So that's someone that I would keep. Continuing on with the DH issue and the problem here, Pat Ragazzo, who was on the last episode of Subway Schaefer Mets on SI, wrote an article on bats at the trade deadline. Recently read something from MLB insider Russell Dorsey of Yahoo Sports, who said that they could possibly land one of these two players who are both, first baseman / DHs. One is Josh Naylor from the Arizona Diamondbacks. Right now he's batting .302, has 9 homers, 49 RBIs, and 10 stolen bases with an .822 OPS. Most importantly, though, with runners in scoring position, he's batting .303. So that's a big deal right there. Left-handed bat could help out the lineup, especially at DH. You look at another player that he mentioned was Baltimore Orioles, also first base DH, Ryan O'Hearn, who's batting .300, 10 homers, 28 RBIs, got 3 stolen bases, and an .858 OPS. Runners in scoring position, a little bit lower, .271 batting average. Both are free agents at the end of the year, so I don't think it's going to take as much to trade to get one of these bats. Arizona right now, I want to talk about the teams real quick because it's going to be important to know where they're at when it comes to the trade deadline. Arizona's in 4th right now, NL West, 2 games above 500, but 7 back in a tough division with the Dodgers, San Francisco, and San Diego leading the charge. Now, Arizona was percentage points behind the Mets to not make the final wild card spot there, and now they are, really struggling to get themselves going. The Orioles are in last place. They're pretty much out of it, 11 games back. They'll definitely be sellers. Out of these two names, Tom, who would you be more interested in bringing back if the Mets could get them in a trade?
What's the positions on the first guy? Like
both of them are first base / DH. So basically, it's just getting a hitter here to a left-handed bat in the lineup.
I don't know. I think either way, I trust Stearns and the scouting enough to pick an option. We've seen with like relievers and stuff, it can be a left field thing. So there could be another name out there that we've not even thought of that they might go and get. But yeah, I think that the Diamondbacks is a more likely one, given how far back they are and the competition in their division. I think that they're more likely to want to do a deal. But either way, if it can offer something that we currently don't have, I'm all for that in a trade. It's hard to say. It's what are we going to have to give up in order for these it's too much for me to stick one particular name on that. I don't feel like either one of them is particularly grabbing me in a way that like going out and getting Schwarber would. Like it's not like that. So what do you think?
For me, it would be Josh Naylor. Played in Cleveland, has some postseason experience under his belt. Think it knows what it takes to play out there. Could play first base if Pete Alonso needs a little bit of a rest. We've seen him play first base. So I would go with Josh Naylor here. Obviously, I would not give up a whole lot for these guys, especially when they are going to be free agents at the end of the year. Unless if the Mets move here is to trade for one of these guys and sign them in place of Pete Alonso, which I would not do. Like I already mentioned my stance on Pete Alonso, but that would be the only thinking I would think if they go after one of these two guys as a possible replacement and maybe platooning with Vientos, who we mentioned could play first base at some point. So I would go with Naylor of the two of the guys. I don't know if Arizona is going to be willing to trade if they could somewhat get back into this race and make it a 4-team race in the NL West. We already know the Orioles are selling here. I don't know what it would take to get any of these guys, if it's just one prospect or, we saw David Stearns work his magic last trade deadline and was able to pick up guys without really having to mortgage the farm here. The Mets still have their guys, but at some point we mentioned they're going to have to think about trading some of these guys. At some point they are going to have to trade some of these guys, especially in the infield. What will it be? I'm still thinking about, and I'm no prospect hugger, but I'm still thinking about holding on to some of these pitchers. Definitely Nolan McLean, Jonah Tong, who's been outstanding in AA. I want to hold on to him. I don't know about Brandon Sproat. He's really struggled in AAA, but I don't want to give up yet. I like to build within when it comes to pitching, go after free agents and trades when it comes to these position players. So hopefully the Mets get somewhat back in the thick of things when it comes to figuring out how to make this team the best as possible going into the trade deadline and then hopefully into a postseason run. Into the comments here, got 153 people in the room. We got a Cubs fan in the room, Brennan here, saying, just curious how you guys view the Cubs this year. Serious threat. I think the Mets are more threatening than the Dodgers. The Cubs have had one heck of a season. They have a great manager out there as well. And with Pete Crow Armstrong, it hurts to see him play so well for you guys. But the Cubs you just have to get into the postseason. And we've seen that so many times outside of last year where the Dodgers ran through everybody and made it to the World Series and won, being the top team in baseball. We've seen so much parity, especially with all of these wild card teams, that anything is possible. Look at the Mets. Second wild card team, barely made it in and made it to within 2 games of the World Series. So the Cubs could have a run in them here. It's great to see them playing well, especially since I don't like the St. Louis Cardinals. I'd rather see the Cubs succeed. But the Cubs have an opportunity here to make a run, and I wouldn't be shocked if they don't. So Brennan, great to have you in here. Thanks for tuning in. And if you want to subscribe to the channel, we'll talk some Cubs especially when we play them. I want to get into with you the reinforcements that are getting ready to come back. The Mets reinforcements are on their way. Frankie Montas, Sean Manaea, as well as Mark Vientos. Montas returning Tuesday versus Atlanta, struggled big time during his rehab, although the team seems to be encouraged after his last start, even though I think that he gave 5 runs. How much stock are you putting into Frankie Montas rehab, the stats that he's been going? Do you have any confidence in Montas being able to find himself with the help of Jeremy Hefner and the pitching lab for him to return to kind of the pitcher he was in Oakland, where he was very good?
I think long-term, absolutely. I think short-term, no. I'm not expecting him to come in on Tuesday and go seven innings, loads of strikeouts and almost have a shutout game. I'm not expecting that. I think whilst some people have been concerned about the numbers in his rehab assignments, it's his spring training effectively. And we all know, pitchers can have a really bad spring training or a bad time on a rehab, come back up to the majors and be absolutely fine. So I think long-term, he will be fine once he gets into his groove and once, he irons out whatever kinks are left. But I think short-term, we are going to see him struggle. We're maybe going to see a few more walks than we would like. But I think there's a good pitcher in there. And I feel like certainly on that back stretch after the All-Star game, Montas will be fine. Absolutely worst case, throw him in the pen. I'd be fine with that. If he goes a couple of innings in the pen, I'm okay with that. I think we've heard that as well. There's been a few sort of rumors that might be the case. But absolutely. Let's throw him in as a starter. I don't think he's going to do any worse than we've seen from the likes of McGill. I think, we've seen a few shaky starts from Canning. He's had 1 or 2 sort of bumps as well. So I think he's going to be around there. He's not going to be an ace, Montas, by any means, but I think he's going to be a serviceable starter in the long term, even if we've got to get through the short term growing pains with him.
Yeah, if he could fill the role just like Tyler McGill did, just need a body to pitch some innings here and, take some of the lumps when this team really needs a fresh bullpen. And like you said, he could go into the bullpen as well. I think that's important that he could pitch out of the bullpen. He can start. At least those options are available to the Mets. I also think it will help that his buddy Sean Manaea as well, both of them pitched in the Oakland rotation together. I think it helps that he will be coming back as well. He's going to make at least one more rehab start, and then he might be back after that. His last start in AAA, pretty good one. 5 1/3 innings pitched, 2 hits, 1 run, and 7 strikeouts. He retired the final 15 batters he faced, which is huge. Last season, 12-6, 3.47 ERA. Manaea's return, more than Montas, will be absolutely huge for this rotation, Tom.
Yeah, huge was the word I was going to use. I think it's going to be massive. But I think the same is going to apply to Manaea. He's a fantastic pitcher. And on his day, he's brilliant. But I'm not expecting him in his first outing when he comes back to be absolutely lights out. We have to remember, he's been out injured for a while. He is going through his spring training at the moment. And we can't expect him, as great as he was last year for the Mets, to come back in and be lights out from day one. It's just not how it works. He's going to need to find his groove against those major league hitters, which is a different ball game altogether than the minors on these rehab assignments. So yeah, I think patience is going to be the word with both of these guys. But yeah, Manaea returning is going to be huge. We've seen the vibes and all the good stuff that he brings off the field in the dugout. He's clearly a very popular guy amongst the team. It's going to give everyone a lift. Like Nelson said in the comment, it's another fresh arm as well, which is fantastic. It maybe frees up a Blackburn to then go into the pen and take some of that pressure off of him. So I think it's great, but let's temper our expectations with both of these guys and not crucify them when maybe they have a rocky first or second appearance back.
And I think we both can agree this is basically the start of the season. This is like the beginning of April for them, right? I mean, these rehab starts were get your mechanics down, get your pitches over, basically spring training all over again for these guys. So the first couple of starts, at least the first 3, 4, 5 starts, you have to, like you said, temper the expectations and just hope for the best here. Now, D brings up a good question here. I do wonder about this rotation once Montas and Manaea return. Who's the one that gets squeezed out once they both return? Obviously, McGill's out right now with injuries. Senga's out. I would assume that it's probably, going to be Paul Blackburn. You're not messing with David Peterson, although he could pitch out of the bullpen. He's got to be a starter. He's one of your top starters right now. Canning is a possibility, I would assume, as well. That could be moving. And maybe Clay Holmes. I mean, you want Clay Holmes to make it through this entire season. He's not going to be starting as many games as we've seen in the past. You're hoping we can get to a 6-man rotation at some point. Finally, it's not happened because of all the injuries, but you are able to put these guys in the bullpen. And with Paul Blackburn's comments a couple of weeks ago saying that he struggles getting ready for bullpen outings, it's a lot different than getting ready for to pitch in the rotation. That sets off an alarm for me that, maybe he just needs to get himself going and being that 5th starter, having him, Montas, Manaea, Canning, and Peterson. Maybe that's the rotation, and you put Clay Holmes back in the bullpen. Not saying that Clay Holmes is not going to work out being a starter. Maybe he gets a spot start here and there where you don't have to bring up someone from AAA or whatever. But Clay Holmes seems the most likely to me that I would put in the bullpen, allow Blackburn to stay in the rotation because he could probably give you a certain amount of innings. He did struggle against Atlanta in that. He did struggle in that. In the game against Atlanta, where he gave up the 3 runs, and then he's kind of settled down after that. He needs repetition, and he needs it to be consistent, and to have him going back and forth from the bullpen. He already says he's not comfortable. He'll do it. But the Mets have to put in mind, if they want to keep winning and if they want to get something out of this rotation, maybe the point is to have him be in the rotation for now. Throw in either Montas, give it a try, or Clay Holmes is to me is the obvious choice.
Yeah, I think first of all, shout out to Paul Blackburn for being that team guy and saying he's prepared to do it, even though it's not what he wants to do. We need more guys like that are not all about themselves and the individual. I think I'm going to assume that, we're talking about this with Senga still being out.
Yes.
I would have a 6-man rotation, even with Senga out. I would use Manaea, Montas. I would use Peterson, Holmes, Canning, and Blackburn, and use it as a 6-man rotation just to keep the guys fresh. Because if they're a bit more fresh, I think we're going to need to go to the pen less, which will then help those guys out. And if as a starting pitcher, you're only going every 6th start, then, you can maybe go a bit deeper into the games. And if we're going deeper into games, we then need the bullpen less, which will help us out. Obviously, this is a perfect world situation, assuming that no one else was to get injured and that Montas and Manaea can come back strong and they don't need to go, and there's obviously then the McGill question of when he comes back. But I wouldn't be opposed to having that 6-man rotation even without Senga. I think let's do it. Let's, like you say, especially with Holmes, his first season as a starter, let's look after them a bit more. Let's make sure they can go deeper into games. They're not going to get injured on the backstretch when we need them the most. And hey, if we've got to do that as a 6-man rotation, why not? We've certainly got numbers. We've got options. Our pitching staff is not like the Dodgers where we've got reams of injuries going on. Let's use it. Why not? If we've got the strength there, absolutely, I'm all for it.
And the Mets' strength this year has been this depth that they have. It's taken a hit, but David Stearns has done enough to, whether it's the bullpen or the rotation, to have enough bodies to be able to throw out there. It's not always going to be a great outing, but you still need bodies out there. There's always that one guy. Maybe he's not the best in the rotation, but he's going to give you the innings. That kind of was Bartolo Colon and for the kids when they were coming up. He was that innings eater. Never always had a great outing. Maybe gave up 4 or 5 hits and runs per game, but was always out there to give you 6 to 7 innings when you needed it. And that's what this rotation could provide here. And this pitching staff is able to do, which is great. And, hopefully it works out. Hopefully the 6-man works out. There's a lot of options to be had, and the Mets can take care of that. Mark Vientos, I mentioned earlier, and we talked about, could be back Monday if all goes well. He had 3 RBIs on Friday for Syracuse. This season, batting .231, 6 homers, 21 RBIs, and a .678 OPS. Like we mentioned, really need Vientos' bat to ignite the bottom of that lineup, whether it's 6, 7. We need his bat 2024 back. And I don't know if we talked about this, if I asked this question earlier, and if I did, just please tell me. Do you make Mark Vientos the DH? Just the DH moving forward? Are you giving him time to work out his issues at third base as well?
I think we kind of touched on it a little bit, but yeah, to answer the question, I would still have him as DH. I think of the options we have, he's better than Marte. He's better than Young. He can have the majority of those DH starts. And if you want to throw him at third every now and then, fine. If you want to throw him at first and give Pete a day off, maybe make Pete the DH. Fine. I'm okay with that. I don't really know what else to say on Vientos. I just, like you've said, I hope he comes back and we see the Vientos that we saw last year. I hope that whatever niggle he's had, he's over it and he's feeling refreshed and ready to go again. But yeah, I'm not convinced that he is the long-term solution, but certainly for this year, fine. Yeah, I'm okay with him as DH because he's the best option we have at the moment. What do you think?
Yeah, I agree. And we already talked about all the options at second and third base and needing playing time. Just let Vientos get the most important thing we got from Vientos was his hitting, right? It masked a lot of defensive deficiencies that he had last season, although he played pretty decently at third base. I will say that. I want him to get his bat going, and the best way to do that is by having him DH. Carlos Ramos agrees. Odd Villain says full-time DH as well. That is the most important part for him. Now, a couple of news and happenings before we wrap up this show. Max Kranick, flexor strain, out 3 to 4 weeks before being reevaluated. Thankfully, no damage to his UCL, which means if there was damage, Tommy John surgery. So thankfully, none of that. He's 3-2 this year with 3.65 ERA. Already talked about Daniel Nunez. He got recalled in replace of Kranick. Probably will get about 4 to 5 outs a game, somewhat kind of what Kranick was getting as well. Mets also called up Chris Davinsky and Tyler Zuber to help out in the bullpen. All of this has come full circle because we mentioned earlier how David Stearns is able to throw bodies in there, switch them out. Davinsky pitched on Saturday to close out the game. We haven't seen Zuber in an appearance yet, but he will definitely get in. I think we traded him with the Rays. We got him from the Rays last season. So it'll be interesting to see him get into some bullpen games as well. Tom, it's been great having you on and doing this show with you. Please let everyone know where they can find you on social media, promote, Mets in the UK, and what you guys got coming up.
Yeah, thanks. It's been great being on, as always, Ant. Appreciate it. I am on X at TomNYMUK. I am also podcast host for Mets in the UK. You can find us at Mets in the UK. All the socials are across all of them. We have a podcast every Tuesday where we take our British take on all things Mets. Short podcasts. Ours are only about half an hour long, so you can listen on lunch break every Tuesday. Check us out. We're on YouTube, all good places you can get your podcasts.
I want to shout out one more comment in the chat, and that's Patty in NYC. She disagrees. She thinks that Vientos should get some time at third too young and too talented just to be a DH. He needs time to develop. So there you have it. There's going to be a lot of decisions to make, basically, right? This Mets team has a lot of decisions to make. And thankfully, because they have this depth on this team, you want these to be tough decisions when it comes to this. So thankfully, they have the bodies and the roster to do this. And hopefully they continue to succeed when they make these decisions and turn away from what was an awful stretch of 7 games of play offensively, defensively, pitching, on the base pass. It was just a whole mess. But the Mets got a victory. They turned it around against Philly, hit for a lot of power, even though they were solo shots. Still got to work on runners in scoring position. And hopefully they are able to build off of this win here against the Philadelphia Phillies. Duran Rivera, 15 likes, 30 watching. Hit that like button and subscribe to Subway to Shea. Please do so. Like we mentioned, please make sure you're liking the stuff that Tom brings to you. Tom NYM UK on X, as well as Mets in the UK on X and on YouTube. Make sure you're subscribing to there. You can subscribe here on YouTube at Subway to Shea. Like the video, as Duran mentioned. And we are, I think it is 8 away from our 1,000th subscriber. So please help out the channel there. We take support as well. We got the super chat, super stickers, and super thanks now available as well on YouTube. And if you want to listen on Apple Podcasts, on Spotify, but as I always like to make sure everyone knows, if you want to be a part of the chat, a part of the conversation, you are tuning in on YouTube as well as X. And you can follow me at Ant Rivera 86. That's personally, and on Subway to Shea, X, Instagram, TikTok at Subway to Shea. Thanks everyone for tuning in to the Subway to Shea podcast. I really appreciate this time with you. Over 158 people in the room. It's always good having a guest as great as Tom has been on this show. We'll definitely have him on again real soon. And it's just this podcast is a lot of fun to do and chat with all you people. So really appreciate that. For Anthony Rivera, for Tom from Mets in the UK, this has been Subway to Shea. And always remember, let's go Mets.
Let's go Mets.